So I want to start with a question that may sound kind of strange, but just bear with me. Who is George Santos?
George Santos, to me, is a bunch of lies.
That's a really good question, and I don't think anybody really knows. I grew up in what's now Santos's district. I don't think anybody of his close to 1 million constituents can actually answer that question.
Since George Santos's decisive victory in the 2022 midterm elections,
if I had the answer to that, I could go to the bank. No, he is really who he is. He's a fraud.
Nearly every day has brought new revelations about his life of lies.
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Jackson Heights, Queens.
And here I am. Today I am a proud regional director of a $1.5 billion fund.
You know, my grandparents survived the Holocaust.
My mom was a 9/11 survivor.
So we set out to uncover who George Santos really is.
In the campaign, I'd say, guys, I'm Jew-ish.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
Unwinding a campaign of deceit that took him from humble beginnings to the halls of power.
I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fake. I didn't materialize from thin air.
Personal space.
Why won't you answer our questions,
Congressman, you seem to be dodging
Don't the American people deserve
about
to
your
know
finances
answers?
and about your background.
Congressman, what about those new accusations?
So thank you all for coming today. George Santos' campaign last year was a campaign of deceit, lies, and fabrication. Today, on behalf of the Nassau County Republican Committee, I am calling for his immediate resignation. Ladies and
These are the Republican Party bosses who hold political power in New York's 3rd Congressional District.
Today, I'm calling on George Santos to immediately resign from Congress for the 3rd District.
5 days after the new Congress was sworn in down in Washington, they admitted publicly that they had been duped by the candidate they handpicked.
Congratulations. He is a stain on the House of Representatives. He's a stain on the 3rd Congressional District.
He should resign. Thank you.
Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Thank you all.
Do you feel any personal responsibility for what happened?
Of course we take some responsibility, and I'm not backing away from it. We take this seriously. We try to get the best candidates. Everything just fell in place for this guy, and shame on us.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Is this it? Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. My name is George Santos. I'm running for United States Congress.
Before George Santos became a household name, he began his political career with a failed bid for Congress during the pandemic. In a district that had gone for Democrats for 5 consecutive elections, Santos lost by more than 12 points.
Back then, Santos was a fringe candidate with almost no money.
Evan Stavisky has been a Democratic strategist in New York for more than 20 years.
After he lost, Santos went down to Washington.
Hey, Washington.
And said the election was stolen from Donald Trump, which is a lie, and that the election was stolen from him, which is a lie.
They did to me what they did to Donald J. Trump. They stole my election.
Santos rallied the crowd before January 6th, and he partied at Mar-a-Lago on New Year's. But as the saying goes, all politics is local. And turning to the 2022 election,
his family lived the American dream. But now George Santos has seen that dream become a nightmare.
Meant figuring out an identity that would connect with voters in New York's 3rd District.
This is one of the most affluent congressional districts in America. If you've ever seen The Great Gatsby, it's set on the North Shore of Long Island. It's traditionally known as the Gold Coast of Long Island. Very affluent, old money communities in a town called Oyster Bay. That's the largest share of this district.
Santos had been refining his story of Wall Street success for a long time. This is what he told CBS News in 2020.
Let me tell you a quick story, and then maybe this helps, right? When I first started in my career at Citigroup, I was told, oh, you're a really smart guy. And here I am. Today I am a proud regional director of a $1.5 billion fund.
The story that he always told me was that he was super successful. There's like that old saying that money talks and wealth whispers. He talked, it didn't whisper.
Ryan Gerdesky runs Republican campaigns in New York. Santos asked him to run his.
George said to me, I'm looking for a campaign manager. Would you want to be it? And I said, George, thank you, but I'll think about it. When I say I'm thinking about it, it's a no. I could have been a lot deeper than I am usually.
On this financial disclosure form for his campaign, Santos said he was worth as much as $11 million. Gerdesky says Santos told him he was worth 10 times that.
He would say that he was worth $100 million. That was his net worth. He said, I made $100 million when I was 30.
A woman I know very well, he went shopping with her to the Americana Mall in Manhasset, talking about how wealthy he was and how he was a preferred buyer at Hermes.
Grant Lally knows the wealthy Republican circles Santos was trying to win over as well as anyone. He ran for Congress there as a Republican back in 2014 and lost.
I know he gushed on that trip over Ferragamo shoes and bragged to her that she couldn't really afford Ferragamo shoes, but they were wonderful and that he always used them.
One of the most prestigious private high schools in New York City is the Horace Mann School in the Bronx. Santos claimed it on his campaign website as his alma mater. On his resume, he said he went to the city's public business school, Baruch College, on a volleyball scholarship, where he said he won the championship.
I'm many things before anybody brings in my sexual orientation to the table. Not that I'm ashamed of it. I'm openly gay. I'm married. I mean, it's not a secret, right? Like we all do our Wine Wednesdays. Whatever.
Santos spoke frequently and proudly of being an openly gay Republican candidate.
It's about the American dream.
A lot of people wanted an openly gay Republican, as a lot of people wanted to say, look, we've moved past the Bush years, and George would be a great representation for that.
It's an honor to live in such a diverse part of the country.
On the campaign trail, Santos said he was Jewish, like many of the voters in his district.
My grandparents survived the Holocaust.
The stories resonated. The money came pouring in. For 2022, Santos raised more than $3 million, 8 times what he raised during his first campaign. Donations came in from more than 40 states. Then, the rules of the game changed. It was 6 months before Election Day. Santos was running unopposed in the GOP primary when he caught the luckiest break in politics.
Major changes to New York State politics as a court-appointed expert has released a draft of new congressional maps for New York State.
I've called this a reverse bait and switch. He's already on the ballot, and a brand new district is drawn that goes from being a non-competitive Democratic district to a leans Republican district. But he's already the nominee.
George Santos, let's go. Running for Congress in this district. Let's hear it for George.
On the stump, Santos tapped the GOP playbook.
We have criminals running the state of New York.
I want Biden gone.
But then Santos took it a step further. He wove himself into the most painful day in New York City's history, tying his story to the attacks on the World Trade Center.
My mom was a 9/11 survivor. She was in the South Tower, and she made it out. She got caught up in the ash cloud. My mom fought cancer till her death.
When the election finally came, Santos went toe-to-toe against experienced Democrat Robert Zimmerman.
Are you calling me anti-Semitic like you also called me homophobic recently on your social media?
I said you support homophobes.
Not. That's
Marjorie
not true. I'm a gay married man, Robert.
I'm over there.
I'm over there.
Okay.
George was 100% confident he was going to win, and then on election night, he not only won, but he crushed it. I mean, one of the best election victories you could possibly want for any Republican that night was George Santos.
Only in this country can the kid who came from the basement in Jackson Heights. That's it.
Santos delivered a big victory for Republicans, flipping a congressional seat from blue to red and helping his party take the majority in the House.
There's Vicky. That's his sister. Oh, she's crying.
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
He runs, he wins. We didn't suspect anything. And then, of course, after the election, the world went upside down.
Eles moravam aqui, que me parece que uma residência dividida com 4 famílias.
Santos' parents were Brazilian, and while the coastal town of Niterói, Brazil, is a world away from New York's 3rd Congressional District, it's where Adriana Parisi says George Santos stayed as a young adult while his mother struggled with a gambling problem. She knew him by his middle name, Anthony.
Mas em relação a Anthony é capaz de qualquer coisa para ter poder.
Santos denies what Parisi told us, that he stole jewelry from her. She never reported him to the police, but store clerk Carlos Bruno Simoes did.
Comprou calças, camisas, vários itens e também par de tênis que, segundo ele, era para presentear namorado. Porque na época era muita grana, era muito dinheiro.
The boutique where Simoes worked has since shut down, but Brazilian court documents show that in 2010, Santos admitted to forging stolen checks. Simoes never got the $1,300 he was owed, and prosecutors seemingly lost track of Santos when he disappeared from the country.
Congressman, do you have a response to New Yorkers who are still calling for you to step down?
Since the 34-year-old's congressional win, many of the stories Santos told on the campaign trail have been exposed as outright lies.
You have more Republicans from New York who are still asking you to step down.
George Anthony DeVolder Santos never worked at Citigroup. He was not worth $100 million when he was 30. We don't know for sure, but he probably wasn't a preferred buyer at Hermes. He didn't attend the Horace Mann School. His mother wasn't in the World Trade Center on 9/11. He wasn't the descendant of Holocaust survivors. He never went to Baruch College. And George Santos never won a volleyball championship.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
Grant Lally runs the North Shore Leader, the newspaper that, during Santos's campaign, published what was otherwise discussed only in whispers in Republican circles.
He began to be known as George Santos among those who paid attention.
George Santos.
Correct. My old campaign manager called me up out of the blue in the middle of this campaign, and he said, "Grant, what is this? This is not a campaign. This is a beach party."
On hotels in Florida alone, Santos's campaign spent more than $11,000, part of the more than $3 million his campaign spent during his run.
We knew from his 2020 filings, he didn't have any money at all.
And then all of a sudden in 2022, he claims to have come into a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, that was really the moment that really hit us, that there's really something wrong here, was when his campaign finance filings claimed that he made a $700,000 loan to his campaign.
Prosecutors at the federal, state, and local level are now investigating. A watchdog group filed this complaint with the Federal Election Commission, questioning Santos's expenses and the source of the funds he loaned his campaign. Around the time he loaned that money, Santos was doing this.
Currently at Harbor City Capital, I manage a $1.5 billion fund, right? And I know how to manage it well.
Harbor City Capital. Before it was alleged to be a classic Ponzi scheme and shut down by the Securities and Exchange Commission, George Santos was the regional director in New York. He has said he wasn't aware of any wrongdoing.
After the federal prosecutors shut down Harbor City Capital, Santos formed new companies together with Nancy Marks down in Florida.
Nancy Marks. Who is she?
She was Santos's campaign treasurer. She filed all of his reports, which means she should have known whether they were true or false when she filed them as the treasurer, and she had that legal responsibility.
Hi, Nancy. We reached out to Nancy Marks several times and never heard back. So we showed up at a meeting for a Long Island library where she serves as a board member. When we arrived, her seat was empty. So we knocked on the door where she runs her business. The lights were on inside, the political posters hung in the windows, but nobody came to the door. George Santos didn't lie only while running for Congress. We crisscrossed New York City and Long Island, digging into his past, and found a trail of bitterness. Women and men once close to Santos who say they'd been burned by his falsehoods and betrayals.
It's crazy to me now thinking back because, I mean, he's had these characteristics from so young.
Attorney Tiffany Bogosian went to middle school with Santos at IS 125 in Queens, where she says he was bullied as a child.
He was trying to be accepted and fit in, and I think he always felt like an outcast. And he started these lies, and I think it just continued. And this was the only way that he knew how.
Later, as adults, Tiffany bumped into Santos at a Starbucks.
Guess who I ran into at Starbucks?
You know what? I ran into her.
She told him she'd settled a big case for a client, $2 million. She says Santos promptly invited her and her client to dinner.
It was this huge room with like one table in the middle. He asked for a $300,000 principal investment, and he essentially said the client was not allowed to know what was being invested in at all.
She didn't like the sound of it, and her client turned down Santos's investment pitch.
And we now know that that was a Ponzi scheme.
It was all fraud. Oh, I was so outraged. I was so upset.
Any room that Anthony walked in, he had to be the star of the show, the belle of the ball.
While they were roommates, Greg Morey said Santos stole his Burberry scarf and later wore it during the rally ahead of January 6th.
I saw that video and I just not very happy. And then I had learned he actually won, and that just blew my brain. It's like that emoji on your iPhone, like the...
This is where Morey said he shared an apartment with Santos and his mother, who he said worked as a housekeeper. Public records show the family was evicted in 2014.
So let me tell you a quick story.
Remember when Santos claimed to work on Wall Street? Barbara Hurtis told us he was actually working with her at this call center in an industrial part of Queens.
To me, in my head, it didn't make sense why someone 22 years old that comes from money would come and work for a company that only pays $12 an hour. Good boy.
And then there's his former dog groomer, Crystalline Russo.
Good jump. I compare him to the Tinder swindler. I think he's a scam artist, basically.
Who alleges Santos was running a sham pet charity, pocketing money meant for dogs in need.
I want people to know that he is a liar, that he's not to be trusted, especially not, as a representative of our Congress, and definitely not anyone that had genuine care for animals.
There's a lot of things you can rationalize with George. You could rationalize why somebody whose mother was a cleaning lady, allegedly, would want to say he had money because if they feel embarrassed by being poor. I cannot rationalize why someone would say their mother died in the World Trade Center when they didn't.
On the morning of 9/11, Ryan Gerdusky's mother escaped Tower 1 alive.
I knew a lot of people whose parents died on 9/11. None of them use it as a bragging point at all. And most don't ever bring it up. Your parents died the most horrific thing possible. I can't rationalize why you would say that when it wasn't true.
There's so many levels of wrong in this story.
Rabbi Deborah Bravo leads the Macomb congregation at her synagogue in Santos's district.
There has to be a similar reason why you would claim being the child of Holocaust survivors and claim that your mother, was in the towers on 9/11. As sick as it seems, I actually think there was a sick brilliance in the way that he picked different stories that I think he thought would make him connected to the people of our district.
The New York Republicans are calling you a disgrace. You will not resign.
There's no formal background check during the process of being elected to Congress. During the campaign, the Democrats assembled this briefing book, but it missed many of Santos's lies. CBS News has learned that Republicans at the national level uncovered several of his lies early on in a report that Joe Cairo says he never saw.
Will we change our process going forward? Of course we will. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We don't want to be fooled again.
If this happened 20 years ago, there would have been a whole cadre of local, political journalists, hard-boiled political journalists who would have been on this story. But, they're all gone. They've retired. They're off to other things.
Scientists made a stunning breakthrough in the field of nuclear fusion, which may lead to limitless clean energy. Here to comment is the man behind the research. Oh, no, it's George Santos.
George Santos quickly became a punchline on late-night TV. As his life of lies came tumbling down, Santos defended himself with a mix of contrition and contempt, often in the same breath.
Good to see you all. I made a mistake. And I think humans are flawed, and we all make mistakes. I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fake. I didn't materialize from thin air.
On the question of religion, he downplayed his fabrications.
I'd say, guys, I'm Jewish. Remember, I was raised Catholic.
But he refused to reveal the source of the money he loaned his campaign.
Where did it come from?
Well, I'll tell you where it didn't come from. It didn't come from China, Ukraine, or Burisma.
How about that?
I got you guys some donuts. Donuts and coffee for all the hard work you guys do.
He faced the onslaught with donuts and defiance, refusing to resign.
I will not resign. I will be continuing to hold my office elected by the people.
Santos insisted he could stay in Congress until his constituents kick him out. He's defiant. Do you imagine that he stays in?
Look, he doesn't care. He will never resign unless it's part of a criminal plea deal.
Without objection, the gentleman is...
It wasn't long before Congressman Santos assumed the role. On the floor of the House, he talked Iran and gas prices. He's taken several votes and attended party meetings.
What will the impact on politics and campaigns be?
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics. It's beyond satire.
Santos declined our multiple requests for an interview, so we met up with him in the basement of the Capitol.
Congressman, there are a lot of people that we've talked to that say that you have a problem with the truth. What do you say to them? What do you want your constituents to know about you? What do you say to some of your constituents who say that they want you to resign?
He offered no responses, so we asked Congressman Santos what we asked everyone else.
Who is George Santos?
We do, pardon me. He could have been the king. He really could have been the king of this entire thing. Saying my mother was a cleaning lady and now I'm a member of Congress, that's aspirational and it's relatable. And I think one of the tragedies is that his real life is much more relatable than the fake life is.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for making history.
Santos said only in America could a kid from a basement in Jackson Heights get elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. The truth turned out to be much more complicated.
Do I feel for him as a person? I feel sorry and sad for him that he has lived, certainly for the past few years, this life of lies. Totally untrue, and it's very sad and perhaps pathetic.
You're done with him?
Yeah, we're done with him.